Hi everybody, Gene here. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, where every single week we answer the most common and uncommon questions about tapping and EFT so that you can eliminate self-sabotage and take the action that you want. It is that time of year again for the Tapping World Summit. If you are unfamiliar, the Tapping World Summit happens every year over the course of 12 days. A number of interviews are released absolutely free with some of the best change work professionals in the world. It is something that I have been featured on a number of times. It's a really excellent program. If you'd like access to these audios, absolutely free. If you go to tappingqna.com/TWS, that's tappingqna.com/TWS, standing for Tapping World Summit. You can sign up to receive access to all of that. As a side note, it is absolutely free for you to participate. But if you do go through the link that I just gave you, you do sign up and you do purchase something, I will receive an affiliate commission for those purchases. I am not doing this because of the affiliate commissions. It's something I really believe in. I wouldn't share anything with you that I don't, but I always think it's important to have full disclosure about my relationship with the things that I'm sharing with you. This is Gene Monterostelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 430, originally aired February 12th, 2020. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today, we are going to talk about intuition and how I disagree with the way that most of my clients describe intuition, what I think intuition actually is, how we can refine that tool and use it in our tapping. Before we do that, I just wanted to send a big thank you out to everyone who supports the Tapping Q&A podcast. I'd particularly like to thank Chris. Chris is one of the newest supporters of the podcast. If you would like to support the podcast, all you need to do is go to tappingqna.com/podcast. If you do that, you will have access to a bunch of amazing bonuses, in addition to that good feeling of knowing that you are supporting the podcast. One of the things that we do with the support every single month is we take 10% of the support for the show and we loan it out to small business owners all over the world through an organization called Kiva. The really cool things is once those loans are repaid, we then lend them out again. So the money that you are contributing to support the show is also helping small business owners over and over again. This month, one of the businesses we supported was a woman by the name of Huong, and I know I am mispronouncing that because my Vietnamese is very, very bad. She runs a vegetable stand with her family. The money she raises from that she uses to send her kids to private school so they can get a better education. The money is going to help her and her family purchase more fruits and vegetables so she has greater inventory so that she can be more profitable. Thank you to everyone who is supporting the Tapping Q&A podcast. And if you'd like to support it as well, all you need to do is go to tappingqna.com/support. So as we talk about intuition today, I recognize the fact that the way I think about it and the way I talk about it is a little different than most people. And that doesn't mean that I'm right and they're wrong or vice versa. But I think it's really important that when we use vocabulary, we're clearly defining our terms. And oftentimes when people talk about intuition, they talk about it as if it is this magical thing that just shows up. You know, I just had a hint of my intuition, or I had this gut feeling. And I'm not denying that that's the way that we experience it. But when we describe it as this outsized force that just kind of shows up out of nowhere, it takes away our recognition of our agency and our skill. That I don't think intuition is this magical thing that shows up, but instead, in my mind, intuition is processing information very, very quickly that is not coming through one of our 5 dominant senses. Therefore, since we can't define it and it's happening so fast, we just call it intuition. So if you think about it, every single time you have experienced intuition, it's not something you've seen, it's not something you've heard, smelled, tasted, or touched. It's just a sense that shows up. And unlike certain situations where I'm like trying to figure out what to do, I mean, I've certainly been in circumstances where I've sat down and I've thought through a problem and the pieces have fallen into place. I'm like, oh, right, this is what's going on. And I can show you my work, how I came to that conclusion as this is the best choice for me. I thought about the pros. I thought about the cons. I thought about what it would cost me in the short and the long term. What would be the return on my investment? And so I can intellectually tell you how I came to this decision. But these things that we call intuition, because they happen instantaneously, and we can't show our work because we don't know what the work is, how we came to that conclusion, and we don't have the vocabulary of, well, I heard this thing or I saw this thing, it becomes mysterious and magical. But I truly believe it is a skill. But because it is happening so quickly and outside of our normal vocabulary, it's hard for us to experience it. So let's look at something that's really, really simple. Even people who wouldn't necessarily call themselves as being super intuitive are able to process. Every single one of us, when we have emotional responses, there's a biochemical reaction that happens inside of our body. And every single one of us has the exact same biochemical response when we have an emotion. So when you feel angry, the glands in your body start creating these peptides that send peptides flowing through your body, through your bloodstream, which creates the physical response of anger. It's the reason why that we can feel hot or we can feel energy. It's because of that chemical reaction. And as you remember from junior high science class, when there is a chemical reaction, one of the things that happens in a chemical reaction is energy is given off. So when the biochemical reaction of feeling angry happens, energy is emitted from someone's body. And because all of us have the exact same biochemical reaction, it is the same energy signature when you are feeling angry that I am feeling angry. It's exactly like when you burn newspaper, it burns yellow, and you burn butane, it burns blue. They're both creating fire, but because they're different substances, they're giving off a different frequency of light. But if you burn butane and I burn butane, it's going to create the same color blue. So the chemical reaction is the same. So when you feel anger and I feel anger, the chemical reaction is the same. Now, we're not giving off energy in the form of light. It's coming off at a different frequency, but the people around us are able to perceive it. And I'm sure you've been in this circumstance where you have had someone walk by you who is really angry and you don't even see them, but it's almost like you just feel this wave of anger as they pass you by. That is because the energy that is being given off from the biochemical reaction of anger is the thing that your system is perceiving. But you don't see it and you don't hear it and you don't feel it the way that I feel touching the table like I am right now. And so it's just like, I just had this instinctual hit, this intuition that he was really angry. Or if we feel that and we see them and then we see their body posture, we say, well, I could just see from their body language that they are angry. And I'm not dismissing that body language isn't an important thing for us to understand. It's true. Body language is a real way that we communicate and understand what is going on. But because we don't have the vocabulary to describe our intuition, we give credit to the thing that we can describe, which is what we are seeing. So all of that is to say is that I believe intuition is a skill. All of us begin with a certain level of aptitude. Our aptitude is our natural ability. Some people are more perceptive of these energetic things that are not visual and audio than others. And we can add ability. Like with everything, we have a baseline of our skill and then we can add to it. So for myself and LeBron James, we both have a particular aptitude for the game of basketball. His obviously is far superior to mine. And on top of that, we can add ability by working on our skills and getting better. You know, I was a better basketball player when I was 18 than I was when I was 13 because I played organized basketball and I practiced all the time. Now, I will never, ever, 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 ever be as good as LeBron James or any professional athlete, but I was able to improve that. Intuition is no different. We all start out with the ability to process information that we are receiving in our environment outside of our 5 natural senses and processing that information very quickly. And we can spend time developing it. And so I think it's important for us to name it as a skill so that we are not dismissing it. Like, I think that's one of the biggest consequences of the way people just say, well, I just had this intuition as if it was this magic thing. By making it something that is exterior, it's easy for us to diminish our ability to name how good we are at processing information, because you've actually figured that out instantaneously on a subconscious and an unconscious level, but you figured it out nonetheless. And so by naming it as a skill, you are, I am, we are much more likely to, one, pay attention to it, and two, sharpen that particular skill. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you just a couple of really simple things that you can do so that you are acknowledging and heightening your intuition, which is going to make it easier for you to navigate your day. And strengthening our intuition is a really great way of being able to improve how we can tap. Because if I have an intuition, quote unquote, about the thing I need to be pursuing, then it gives me the ability to focus what I am tapping on as I'm moving forward. So the first thing that we can do to improve our intuition is, number one, simply acknowledge that it exists and that it is a skill. And by doing that, we recognize that we can reach for it more often. If I know it is a skill that I have, I'm going to tune into it versus those times where my intuition is just so strong, it overrides and I can't help but notice it. So acknowledging it means that we're going to use it more often. The second thing that we can do, at least for me, to heighten the skill, is that whenever I am trying to understand something and I'm thinking through it, I oftentimes think my intuition lives more in my heart and in my gut. And again, it's not that intuition only lives those two places, but I have the vocabulary to describe the way that I think. It was an intellectual process and I weighed the pros and cons. And so my intellectual self, it is easy for me to recognize what that is. Where those sensations, those heart feelings and those gut feelings, by taking a moment and going, okay, I'm trying to figure this out and what I need to do. And I think through it intellectually, and I'm a process-oriented guy, so that's what I naturally do. Then what I do is I take a moment and I go, great, I'm going to do a heart check and I'm going to do a gut check on this thing. And I'm just going to rethink through what I'm trying to figure out. I'm going to go, okay, great. What does my heart think and what advice does my heart have? And I just close my eyes and I just imagine, for me, I put a little cartoony face in the front of my heart so it can talk to me. Now, you might just get the information without having to use a metaphor like that, but that's a really useful way for us to tune in and to be present to that thing. And then I do the exact same thing with my gut. I go, great, gut check. Gut, what do you think I should be doing? And again, I imagine my stomach as my gut as this little bitty creature that has a fun little cartoony face on it. And we just have a little conversation and it gives me information. And by intentionally doing this process, even if I don't intentionally do it all of the time, because I'm regularly checking in with these places, I'm much more likely to get feedback from my gut and my heart when I'm not specifically asking it. So by naming it as a skill, by intentionally tuning into these other parts of my system for information, I am more likely to have it show up even when I'm not tuning into it. Another way that I find that is really good in tuning into this is I have a process. It's called the grounding process. You can hear an example of the grounding process in episode 375. That's tappingqna.com/375. Or if you go into the archives, just look for episode 375. I actually lead Jessica Ortner through an experience where we go through the grounding process where we turn into our physical self, our emotional self, our intellectual self, and our higher self. And it's a really simple tapping and guided imagery to gather information so that our entire system is more integrated. So we're not leaning on one of those, because most of us just lean on one of those four things. For me, because I'm a process person, it's my intellectual self. But by giving myself space and going through this process and regularly tuning into these things, what I'm doing is I am making sure that I'm more connected to these parts. And so the nice thing about Podcast 375 is I do all of the work for you, and it makes it possible for you to just sit back, relax, and tune in so you become better at it. The last thing that we can do to cultivate and improve and be more aware of our intuition is to simply tap on our intention for that fact. And so for me, it would look something as simple as, I recognize the fact I have multiple intelligence. I am more than just my intellectual self. That I have information that comes from my body, that comes from my emotions, that comes from my spirit. And I give these parts of my system permission to come forward, to speak clearly, to provide guidance, because they have wisdom. And when I give myself and I give my system permission to do this, not only will I make better choices in the moment, I will be more grounded in the moment, and I will be sharpening these skills so that I can use them again and again and again. And so you can see that tapping, there's nothing magical about it. I'm just stating my intention. I'm stating the things that I know that are true, and I'm stating the parts that I want to have happen more. And if I do that while tapping, any resistance that I have to using my intuition is going to speak itself. And so I'm going to be tapping on that resistance. And so I'm going to be more likely to use my intuition and trust it as I'm moving forward. Because when I trust my intuition, I'm not trusting, again, this magical force that's coming from the outside. I'm just trusting all of the tools and skills that I have to process a circumstance, which is going to make it easier for me to move forward. It's going to make it easier for me to make good, thoughtful decisions. That's my take on intuition. Like I said, it's a little different than other people. And again, it's not better or worse. It's more just creating an understanding of the vocabulary so it's easier for me to navigate my day, to be more successful, to get more out of life, and to get more out of my tapping. Because when I'm heightening and sharpening this intuition, I can also ask myself, okay, intellectually, I think this is why I'm struggling with this. Heart, what do you think the issue is I should be tapping on? Gut, what do you think the issue is that I should be tapping on? And by doing this, I'm going to get a clearer understanding of what I'm experiencing, which means that it's going to be easier for me to be tapping, which is going to make it easier for me to move forward in a healthy way. I would love to hear your feedback on this concept and my approach. I'm not saying it's right. This is the way I work and operate from with myself and my clients. I would love to hear your experience. I'm constantly growing and learning because of the feedback that you provide. I can always be reached, Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. If you're listening on the website right now, if you click on the contact link up in the menu at the top, you can send me an email and a voicemail from right inside of the site. And if you're one of those lucky people who have the free Tapping Q&A app, which is available on both Apple and Android devices, if you click on the contact link, you can send me an email or a voicemail from right inside of the app. I always love hearing from you, particularly when I'm talking about something where it's more conceptual. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. If you know someone in your life who would find this conversation useful, maybe you can send it to a friend, have them listen to it, and you guys can sit down, have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and just kind of talk it through and process your own experience. The easiest way someone finds a new piece of content is from the recommendation of a friend. And this would be a great opportunity for you to connect with someone in your life and have a great conversation about how we navigate the world. If you haven't done so already, I'd really encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. In podcasting parlance, subscribe is free. It's not like Netflix or Disney Plus or anything like that. And some platforms don't use the word subscribe. They use the word follow. The reason why it is important for you to subscribe and or follow is so that you don't miss an episode. Right now, we're publishing episodes every Monday and Wednesday. If you are subscribed, then you're going to get a notification on your phone when those new podcasts show up, and you're not going to miss any great content, which is going to help you to continue your transformational journey, eliminating self-sabotage and taking the action that you want. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrestelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrestelli Tapping Q&A. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelli and Tapping Q&A.